I never thought my marriage would fall apart so suddenly. My wife and I had been together for 7 years, married for 3. We lived in a modest house in a quiet, suburban neighborhood where we knew most of our neighbors by name. Sometimes, we'd chat with them during evening walks or while tending to the garden. Life felt stable, even comfortable. I never imagined that comfort could be shattered so quickly. One of our neighbors had a son, younger, energetic, and apparently far too interesting to my wife. At first, I noticed them chatting in the yard or at the edge of our driveway. I brushed it off. She was friendly by nature, and it didn't seem out of character. She always had a way of striking up conversations with people, even strangers. But something about their interactions must have lingered beneath the surface, because one Saturday morning, she sat me down with a tense look on her face. I can still recall the exact way she shifted in her seat, the way she avoided eye contact. That's when she admitted it. She had feelings for him. Our neighbor's son. Her words felt like a punch to the stomach. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what she had just said. I asked if she was ending our marriage. Her answer stunned me even more. "No, not necessarily," she said quietly. "I just need time to figure out if I want him or if I want us." It was like something out of a bad movie. She was asking to put our marriage on hold, like she was testing out a new car while keeping her old one parked safely in the garage. I was speechless. How could she say something like that and expect me to be okay with it? She looked at me, as if waiting for approval, as if this was somehow reasonable. When I found my voice, I told her how absurd it was. I couldn't believe she thought I'd be willing to sit around, waiting for her to make a decision between me and the neighbor's son. But she stood firm, repeating her request. "Either I go see if there's something real with him, or I might resent you forever for holding me back." She framed it like she was doing me a favor, like giving her this time away would somehow protect our marriage in the long run. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Instead, I said the words I never thought I'd say. "Fine. Do what you need to." The words left a bitter taste in my mouth. I felt humiliated, betrayed by someone I trusted the most. And yet, part of me thought maybe this was the only way to see her true colors. If she was already halfway out the door, there was no point trying to hold her hand. She packed her things quickly, as if the decision had already been made long before she told me. I watched her leave, feeling the silence settle heavily around me. Our house, once filled with laughter and shared memories, felt empty. I tried to distract myself, working longer hours, hitting the gym, anything to keep my mind occupied. Friends invited me out, but I always declined. The truth was, I didn't feel like socializing. How could I? My wife was off with another man, and I was supposed to wait patiently for her to decide if she wanted to stay married to me. Days passed, and then weeks. Neighbors whispered about seeing them together around town. Apparently, they weren't hiding it. The rumors stung, but I pretended not to care. Mutual friends asked why I was putting up with it. I didn't have a good answer. One evening, my father called. He had heard what happened. His advice was simple but struck me hard. If she values you, she won't need a month to figure it out. And remember, you have a choice too. I let those words sink in. I wasn't powerless. I didn't have to stand by, waiting for a decision like some contestant in a twisted reality show. I could take control. The next day, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. I laid everything out, the conversations, the betrayal, the so-called trial period. The attorney listened carefully and then told me I had every right to initiate proceedings. Our marriage, he said, could be considered irretrievably broken. I left his office feeling strange. There was a sadness that sat heavy on my chest, but mixed in with it was a sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was doing something for myself. That same day, I quietly moved some personal funds into a separate account, just in case. I started going through our house, sorting belongings. Some things were mine alone, Others were communal, but I wanted to be prepared. Each step felt surreal, like I was dismantling the life we had built together piece by piece. A few days later, my doorbell rang. It was one of my wife's friends. She had apparently heard what was happening and came to talk. "She just needs time," her friend said gently. "She's searching for clarity. You shouldn't be so quick to end things." I shook my head. "She left me for another man. That's not clarity. That's betrayal." Her friend frowned, clearly frustrated. "You might regret acting in haste." I met her gaze, feeling calmer than I expected. I'm not the one who walked out. That was the end of the conversation. I closed the door, feeling a strange sense of peace. I wasn't her backup plan, and I wasn't going to sit around hoping she would choose me. The decision was already made, and this time, it was mine. The moment our friend departed, looking disheartened, I remained resolute, feeling the seconds drag by in a painful crawl. I half expected my wife to check in with updates, reaching out every day, yet her messages were rare, like whispers in the wind. Perhaps she was reveling in the attention of the neighbor's son, wrapped in the thrill of novelty, or maybe she was cloaked in shame, her silence a shield against facing what she had done. As the month drew to its close, her message arrived, a simple text, brief and pointed. "Let's talk when I'm back." I'm almost ready to decide. Her audacity made me laugh, humorless and hollow. She truly believed this decision lay solely in her hands, that she held the power to dictate the terms of our future. When she returned, precisely 4 weeks to the day, she breezed into our living room as though nothing had happened, as if the past month had been a mere dream. "I've thought a lot," she began, her tone earnest yet strangely detached. "I do care about you, so let's figure out how to fix this. I'm leaning towards working on our marriage." Her words dripped with arrogance, as if it were a privilege for me to hear them. I listened quietly, letting her believe she held all the cards. She spoke of the neighbor's son, describing him as fun yet immature, not the stable partner she had envisioned. Her words attempted to erase the past month, as if her flirtation was nothing more than a dalliance in a summer breeze. She reached out, trying to wrap her arms around me, her apology lacking the warmth of sincerity. My stomach churned at her casual approach, and that's when I dropped the bombshell. "I filed for divorce," I said, my voice steady and unyielding. Her face contorted with shock, words tumbling from her lips in a stammer. You what?" she asked. Calmly, I repeated, "I won't be the second choice. I'm taking control. I'm done waiting for your verdict." Anger sparked in her eyes. "You can't do that," she spat, her words a venomous hiss. "This is our marriage." I shrugged, my resolve unshaken. "You bailed on it the second you moved in with him. I deserve better." Her demands were desperate, insisting I retract the filing, claiming it was a rash decision. I stood firm, telling her I'd had weeks to think about it. Her tears turned manipulative, claiming confusion, that she only wanted to test the neighbor's bond. Her logic was twisted, and I said as much. "You test drive a car, not a spouse. Marriage isn't a temporary lease you can toss aside and retrieve at will." The weight of my words settled heavily between us, her realization dawning that I was serious. She stormed out in fury, her plan to waltz back thwarted. Her anger echoed as she accused me of destroying our future, insisting she never truly wanted to leave. I reminded her that was exactly what she did. Her threats to fight me tooth and nail in the divorce were met with my calm. After she left, I contacted my lawyer to update him on the meltdown. He assured me our case was strong, especially given her open affair. She might walk away with a share, but not the half she threatened. In the ensuing weeks, she changed her tactics, telling mutual friends I had abandoned her without reason, painting me as the cold-hearted villain. But I set the record straight with those who cared to ask. Others, not knowing the full story, either believed her or chose to remain neutral. Meanwhile, the neighbor's son distanced himself, leaving her to flounder for sympathy. She even appeared at my father's doorstep, tearful and pleading, hoping to sway him to her side. He gently asked her to leave, stating simply, "My son is an adult, and he's made his choice." As negotiations for the divorce commenced, our lawyers deliberated over property division. With no children involved, matters were simplified. She demanded spousal support, citing how I had built assets while she contributed emotionally. The irony was palpable, her claims almost laughable. Her contribution was leaving, after all. The lawyers haggled until a settlement was reached, fair if not perfect. She received some money, but far less than half. I retained the house, a pre-marriage purchase, and a portion of my savings. Her departure and affair had undoubtedly influenced the outcome of our negotiations. As the final hearing approached, she made one last attempt, sending a text laden with nostalgia, reminding me of the good times, suggesting we could salvage what remained. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing. Memories of happier days flickered like a dying flame. But the image of her packing her bags, choosing another, remained vivid and unshakable. The betrayal overshadowed everything else. But I responded once, politely but firmly, "You made your choice and I'm following through with mine." She never texted me again. On the day of the final hearing, the judge confirmed our agreement. My wife looked tired and sad, perhaps realizing her dream of picking between me and the neighbor's son had backfired. After the paperwork was signed, she stepped toward me in the hallway, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never wanted this. I was just confused, bored." I gave a small nod, my expression unchanged. "Confusion doesn't excuse your betrayal," I said. She reached out as if to hug me, but I backed away. "Let's not make this more painful. We're done." She swallowed, tears welling up in her eyes, but she accepted it. My chest felt heavy, but I walked out of that courthouse with a sense of finality. The aftermath was surprisingly calm. We parted ways with no further drama. People asked questions, but I kept it simple. She left for a month to test her feelings and found me ready with divorce papers when she returned. My father, though never one to say, "I told you so," gave me a knowing smile, proud that I'd stood my ground. The ex-wife moved in with some relatives, or so I heard. The neighbor's son swiftly moved on to another fling, leaving her in the dust. Quite the love triangle fiasco that ended poorly for her. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of her around town, a shadow of guilt crossing her face as she avoids eye contact. No more demands or pleas for reconciliation. I suspect she's exhausted her attempts. Perhaps she finally grasped that you don't get to treat a spouse like an option. Some mutual acquaintances told me she regrets everything deeply, but regrets can't fix what she destroyed. I hold no illusions about second chances. Strangely, I don't feel triumphant, more like relieved. Freed from a partner capable of discarding me like an old toy while she tested a fling. Freed from the anxiety of waiting for her to choose. Freed from her mother's well-meaning, but prying questions about grandchildren. Freed to rebuild my life on my own terms with honesty and self-respect intact. In a sense, her month-long trial was a blessing. I saw her true colors. If she was bored enough to experiment with another man, it's better we parted ways before kids or deeper entanglements. The divorce settlement was almost fair, as the lawyers put it. Good enough for me to move forward, not feeling like I lost everything. She got some assets, but not enough to leave me financially strained. I got closure. My father says I might find someone more genuine in the future, someone who won't treat me as second best. For now, I'm content. I'll focus on my career, my hobbies, maybe travel a bit. The quiet in my house feels peaceful rather than lonely. Some nights, I reflect on how swiftly a marriage can unravel once the trust shatters. A single statement, "I'm leaving for a month to see if I prefer the neighbor," was all it took to demolish the bond we had. Would I ever speak to her again? Possibly. Polite nods if we cross paths. But the old relationship is gone, replaced by a curt finality. And that's the price she pays for flipping my life upside down. Thinking she'd return with a triumphant, "I choose you," I turned her game around, letting her find out the hard way that I'm nobody's second choice.